Ortiz, there have been an estimated 530,000 migrant gotaways since October. Those are the people who were spotted by Border Patrol, but they were not apprehended and are now walking around the country. Today, tens of thousands of people have amassed at various points along the U.S.-Mexico border. You saw some of them in Matamoros. Here's more video footage of the U.S.-Mexico border. All of this as we get close to the end of Title 42. This is in San Ysidro, California. The Biden administration has dispatched 1,500 active-duty military troops to assist in the processing of these migrants, but not in the deportation or the detention of the migrants. It's also adopting a modified Trump strategy now, the Biden administration is, which denies asylum to those who show up without first applying to this website that they've talked so much about. An interesting move here. This is very late in the game, considering the Biden administration has made a point of doing the opposite of whatever the Trump administration did when it comes to immigration enforcement. And here's President Biden.
So, but it remains to be seen. It's going to be chaotic for a while.
Can you expand on what you meant when you said there will be chaos at the border? For how long?
Well, we've had chaos at the border for a number of years. We have to fully fund the border security effort.
Why hasn't it been more of a priority? Let's get an on-the-ground assessment right now from correspondent Chuck Holton. He is reporting live from El Paso, Texas, where the streets have been full of illegal immigrants and the community is struggling to keep up. Chuck, good afternoon.
Hi there, John. Yes, actually, up until yesterday, there were just hundreds and hundreds of migrants all around this church right here. They come here to claim asylum so that they can't get picked up by the Border Patrol. And as long as they're in the church grounds, the Border Patrol leaves them alone. But today, it's all cleaned out. There's more journalists down here than there are migrants, and that's because the mayor of El Paso was just coming down here for a tour. And so they very quickly moved all the migrants out, cleaned the streets all up. It looks very perfect at the moment. But suffice it to say, there are tens of thousands of migrants. We have about 10,000 a day coming across the border now, and that's that's a record beyond a record. John?
Chuck, keep us posted. Interesting timing that they clear all those folks out when the cameras show up to document it. Keep us posted. Chuck Holton for us live in El Paso, Texas. Thank you, Chuck.
Our other top story right now, House Oversight Committee Chairman James Comer and Senator Chuck Grassley are standing their ground on an FBI records request. They want to see a document which allegedly contains information about bribes President Biden took while he was vice president. In a new 6-page letter, the FBI, as you see here, rejected Congressman Comer's subpoena. The department bringing up various reasons for this stonewalling. Let's get out to Kilmeny Dukart now with reaction coming in from Capitol Hill. Kilmeny, what can you tell us about possible next steps now to get this document?
Yeah, Bianca, John, good to be with you. I had messaged the Oversight Committee spokesperson yesterday to get a better sense of where things stood. That deadline expiring noon yesterday for the FBI to hand over those documents. They responded to me with a statement from Congressman James Comer as well as Republican Senator Chuck Grassley saying that the FBI's response to them confirms that that document is real. And they wanted to know also what the agency had done to investigate this. They said that the FBI failed to answer both of those questions. So they said that they plan to follow up again with the FBI. In the meantime, another story that we're covering right now, House Judiciary Committee Republicans releasing an interim report that focuses on a letter that was signed by 51 former intelligence officials that dismissed Hunter Biden's laptop, that story, as Russian disinformation. This, of course, was something that they had focused on as part of their congressional investigation, and it was a letter that was made public prior to the 2020 election. I spoke with Congressman Darrell Issa, who's a member on that committee, who said that they wanted to answer one key question, and that was, why did some of the most powerful government officials dismiss the laptop story as Russian disinformation when that was completely false? He said that the answer is simple, because they wanted to get President Biden elected. Now, they say that the evidence is this email written by former acting CIA Director Michael Morrell to former CIA Chief John Brennan, asking him to sign that October 2020 letter. Morrell writes, trying to give the campaign, particularly during the debate on Thursday, a talking point to push back on Trump on the issue. Brennan responds, "Okay, Michael, good initiative. Thanks for asking me to sign on."
We learned that, in fact, they did it because they wanted the president to win. And in many cases, they used the power of the government itself. While they were supposed to be working for the president, they were actually working to replace the president. That's closer to a coup than it is to a letter.
Yeah, the report says Morell sent the CIA the final version for review, labeling it as a rush job to get immediate approval. It also says the former director of national intelligence suggested strengthening the wording in the letter to say it has all the classic earmarks of a Soviet-Russian information operation rather than the feel of a Russian operation. Republicans say that the bottom line is current government officials, namely those working within the CIA who are supposed to be serving the president of the United States, were actively working to influence a presidential campaign. Bianca, John.
Pretty incredible stuff. Kilmeny Dukart live on Capitol Hill. Thanks, Kilmeny.
All right, ladies, let's welcome in now Congresswoman Nancy Mace. She is a member of the House Oversight Committee. You saw her at that news conference yesterday. Congresswoman, great to have you back with us.
Thank you for having me this afternoon.
All right, let's start with this letter from the FBI to James Comer. Here is part of it. I'm quoting it. "The integrity of our work often requires us to preserve a separation between legislative investigations and law enforcement investigations." You know, read between the lines here for us, Congressman. It sounds like this kind of corroborates what we've heard from some of these whistleblowers, that the DOJ, the FBI, they are stonewalling members of Congress as they try to get to the bottom of this.
Yes, potentially. And what we have seen over the last couple of months is Biden family members with this shell game of communist China money going into their bank accounts. And it certainly feels like, after ignoring the letter yesterday from Grassley and Comer, that they're now playing, government officials at the FBI playing a shell game with documents that will be the smoking gun in this investigation.
Let's also talk about some of the concerns yesterday you guys expressed. Here is Oversight Chairman James Comer.
To my Democrat colleagues, I want to say that this investigation will continue to move forward. Do you want to continue covering up the Biden's influence peddling schemes when the evidence is being placed right in front of you?
Now, extensive evidence in granular detail yesterday against the Biden family. We got to think, President Trump was impeached over one phone call. At what point does this move past the unethical phase to the illegal phase? We heard the chairman there very careful about not using illegal, talking about unethical in this situation. At some point, is the House going to be forced to impeach President Biden over this stuff?
Well, at some point, I believe the Oversight Committee will refer charges to the Department of Justice, which would be the right next step if the evidence proves that out. It should be deeply concerning to any American in this country, regardless of your political affiliation, when you look at the dozens and dozens of shell companies, the tens of millions of dollars that was moved around. We're talking about, the left wants to say that no one is above the law. Well, put your money where your mouth is. This is literally the Biden family tree receiving millions of dollars from communist China through these shell companies, including one of the president's grandchildren, nieces and nephews, a brother, a son, current wives, former wives, ex-wives. And it's unbelievable that no charges have been pressed in the last 7 or 8 years in regards to this. And so we've got to do our investigation to show the American people. And, mainstream media wants to say, well, where's the evidence? We literally showed you just the tip of the iceberg bank records yesterday. And this is just the start.
Yeah, they don't want to cover this at all. And just for comparison, I want to show everyone some live pictures right now. I think we have. There's been a live media. This is George Santos's office. Some of the members of the press are gone. They're on lunch break, but they've been staking out his office all morning long. This is one member of the House of Representatives. There's almost zero coverage of everything you guys presented yesterday about Hunter Biden and the Biden family. Why do we continue to see this disparity of media coverage on these stories?
And that one member is being investigated, is being indicted and charged with a crime. And the law is being followed in that case. But the law should apply to Republicans and Democrats alike. And if it's good enough to investigate a former president, then we should also be good enough to investigate a current president and his family if they've been corrupted by our adversaries around the world. Yet you just saw that. That's what they're doing. It's crazy to me. You treat everybody the same.
That's what they care about, yeah. The other thing, too, that's interesting about is the timing of this. Hunter Biden's been under investigation for years. George Santos has been around for like 4 months, and all this seems to be the top priority for the FBI, getting George Santos on these charges.
By the way, announced the night before our press conference yesterday, too. I mean, you know.
They say there are no coincidences in this world, Congressman Mace. So, well, can fill in the blanks on that one. Great to see you as always. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to. You're a nasty person, I'll tell you.
Crowd cheering for former President Trump quite a bit last night. You know, he didn't hold back during the CNN town hall in New Hampshire. He also went on to slam the jury verdict in the E. Jean Carroll case. He called out President Biden on the border, Ukraine, and inflation. We have more reaction to last night's town hall and the backlash CNN is receiving for hosting Trump. A lot of those Democrats aren't too happy.
No, they are not. Also, we're going to talk more about Title 42 and its expiration coming up at 11:59 this evening. DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says the border is not open, but obviously that message not getting out. Areas including Chinese businesses linked to the CCP while Joe Biden was vice president. But Comer's latest report does not show any payments were made directly to Joe Biden, either as vice president or after he left office. Comer has also called the transactions unethical, but he has avoided calling them illegal. Now, the bank records do not tell us why all these family members from the Biden family got the money, and his committee, Comer's committee, will continue to investigate the millions of dollars that they have received. But again, nothing illegal, according to James Comer, quite yet. But let's talk about this and welcome in the author of The Great U.S.-China Tech War, Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you.
Thank you, John.
Let's put up this web that the House Oversight Committee kind of laid out for us that shows the Biden family's connections, 20 companies. We heard all the LLCs rattled off there. There are some of these other companies. You look at this one at the top of the chain there, CEFC. That's a big one here. The question I have, Gordon, is why would, if there's any legitimate explanation for several 9 Biden family members receiving money that flowed from China to various bank accounts and shell companies and then distributed among the family, is there any legitimate explanation for something like that?
There is no legitimate explanation for these payments. In the middle of March, a spokesperson for Hunter Biden's legal team said that the Chinese company, CEFC, paid millions to the Biden family as, quote, good faith seed funds. Well, in my book, that's an admission of corruption, because corruption is the only explanation why in a business setting, a Chinese state company would make payments to a relative of the then vice president and afterwards the ex-vice president. So clearly what we're seeing here is corruption. The one thing that the Comer Committee has yet to do is to link these payments to a specific action by Joe Biden as vice president or president. But I think that that's coming down the road.
Yeah, and you think about this, Gordon. I mean, when a Chinese company that's associated with the CCP, when they say, you know, a good faith effort, do companies like this ever do something, just give you cash and say, we don't expect anything in return for it. Go ahead, good luck starting your corporation, and let us know how it turns out. There was obviously some sort of expectation on the back end.
Yeah, that never happens in the real world. And we've seen a number of transactions between Hunter Biden and the Chinese entities that suggest corruption. So, for instance, Hunter Biden's firm got billions of dollars to manage. Now, China does commit billions of dollars to American and other fund managers, but those people have track records in managing money.
Right.
Hunter Biden obviously didn't. Hunter Biden's only qualification for this money was because of his father. And so really what we're looking at are a series of transactions that do not happen in the real world in the absence of influence peddling, bribery, and, yes, corruption.
And real quickly, too, according to the committee, the money flowed to the Bidens with the help of Hunter's business partner, a guy named Rob Walker. He also has connections with Romania. Here's Oversight Committee member Kelly Armstrong talking about that.
Popovich's company paid Walker LLC just over $3 million. And like clockwork, Walker dispersed approximately $1 million of that money to the Bidens. If that sounds familiar, it should. It's essentially the same structure Walker and the Biden family had with the Chinese money, a 1/3 cut.
You know, there's a lot of sizzle here, Gordon. I don't know if you have the steak quite yet, but they do seem to be getting closer to the evidence that will turn this from unethical to illegal.
Yeah, there are two types of steak here. One of them is that money actually ended up in Joe Biden's bank account. And there's some suggestions that that has occurred, but no one's been able to prove it. The other is that there be a link between the payments and an action by Joe Biden as an official, either president or vice president. And as I said, that's probably something that we're eventually going to see.
We wait until that happens. Gordon Chang, great to see you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John.
There are several people in a Facebook group known as the Loudoun Love Warriors, and they're now being investigated by the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office in Virginia. The Facebook chat also includes some ties to local elected officials there who are allegedly threatening, even harassing some parents who spoke out during those school board meetings. Joining us now live from Loudoun County with more details on this disturbing story is our national correspondent Logan Raddick. What's happening, Logan?
Well, Bianca, not a lot of love in that group, the Loudoun Love Warriors, because there were threats made against other parents in the Loudoun County School District. One mother I spoke to said that she was threatened to be curb stomped. And then there was also threats to get some parents fired from their jobs and also even refer them to the FBI. Now, this was first reported in local media by WJLA in Washington, D.C. Again, the group called Loudoun Love Warriors. It was made up of parents who were against those speaking out against a woke agenda in schools. It was made up of campaign volunteers, staff, and supporters of Loudoun County elected officials. And the Facebook group included people associated with Loudoun County Commonwealth Attorney Buddha Bibarai and school board members. However, none of those officials made threats themselves. Now, one of the parents being threatened is Alicia Brand. Here's what she told me.
So when you are advocating in the best interest of your child in a school, it is very disconcerting to have members of the public threatening to kill you, threatening to curb stomp you. It's very, very upsetting that members of our own community are putting forward threats like this. It's unacceptable, and it does not matter what side of the political aisle you are on. We should be able to disagree and then shake hands and move on.
And Bianca, you mentioned local authorities are now getting involved. We'll put up this statement that we received. Quote, the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office is open an investigation into potential threats made within the Loudoun Love Warriors Facebook group following a citizen complaint yesterday. A previous investigation of the group and comments made about Mark Wynn, a resident of Leesburg, Virginia, determined that no criminal act had occurred. So this investigation only ramping up now with these threats made by parents against other county. And again, this was a pivotal county in the 2021 Virginia gubernatorial election, and it's also one of the wealthiest counties in America. Back to you.
Yeah, it was such an important county, and those parents there fighting for their kids yet again in sort of a attack situation here. Logan Raddick, thanks so much. I know you'll be watching that.
Thank you.
Still ahead, folks, Donald Trump, well, he just owned CNN, didn't he, during this town hall? He called out Joe Biden and all the witch hunts that follow him. And what about the bias? Would CNN ever treat a Democrat the way they treated Trump? We'll dig in ahead and have more details on this. Plus, the United Kingdom sending missiles to Ukraine, but before they can be used, President Zelensky says his forces need more time to plan the counteroffensive. New details ahead. And again, we're looking live here at our southern border. You are looking at Matamoros, Mexico, just south of Texas border here. Those are illegal migrants crossing into our country. The border is about to be filled with more people trying to get in illegally, hours away from Title 42 lifting. And
better than what we're doing right now, because we're spending money like drunken sailors. You're going to have millions of people pouring into our country right now at a level that nobody's ever seen before.
I would like for you to answer the question.
Okay, it's very simple to answer.
That's why I asked it.
It's very simple to, you're a nasty person.
Welcome back to, of course, media bias on full display. But the president quickly took to Truth Social afterwards last night. He thanked the audience. He called it amazing. And, you know, folks, the bottom line is CNN's panelists after seemed more upset that the network gave him any time. But he is the leading candidate for the GOP, according to the polls here. And this is what voters had to say about his performance last night. Take a listen.
As you guys asked him the first question at the town hall about the 2020 election, rather than current stuff.
So don't you think he could say it's time for me to start talking about 2024 and not lies that aren't true?
Couldn't the media ask him a question about 2024?
Well, there were questions, but you're right, that was the first thing, but that's something that was on our mind, and that's why I was asked first.
I don't think anybody wants to hear about 2020 at this point. Everybody wants to hear about 2024, the future, and what comes after that. And he did not talk enough about that tonight.
Oh, they got him. Let's welcome in political analyst Mark Halpern for more of a discussion on this. Also with us, Brianna Lyman. She's a reporter at the Daily Caller and host of The Facts. Great to have you both with us.
Thanks so much.
Good afternoon.
All right, Mark, so we were together when this whole exercise began, and then we went our separate ways to watch the end. Give us your take on how this went for Donald Trump.
Well, by every metric you could cite, I think it went very well for him. His team's very pleased. I'll say two things that I haven't heard much discussed that I think are pretty important and speak to how well he did. First of all, town hall meeting, I don't have an exact count, but a very large percentage of the questioning was done not by citizens of New Hampshire, but by a CNN journalist. That doesn't seem like it's a town hall. And then second, you know, you saw the clip there where the voters like, why didn't he talk more about 2024? Well, Caitlin Collins chose to talk about abortion. She chose to talk about January 6th. She chose to talk about 2020. It's possible Donald Trump could have pivoted and said, people don't care about that, but he chose to answer the question. So I think if the voters have a complaint about the topics, for the most part, their complaint is not with Donald Trump, but it's with Caitlin Collins.
Yeah, it was one of those cell phone moments for CNN, I think, Brianna, when, you know, anyone of average intelligence could answer that question. It was a great job by that member of that panel there. Let's also focus, too, on Caitlin Collins and the topics that she had. Some of the highlights, he vowed to pardon many people on January 6th. I also thought, Brianna, it was important when he pulled that piece of paper out and read his comments from January 5th. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many liberals were concerned about this, because it actually gave Donald Trump a chance to get his side of that out there. And then also take a listen to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She was on MSNBC last night, the perfect place for her to complain about CNN. Here she is.
You know, I know you said earlier that you will not comment on the platforming of such atrocious disinformation, but I would. I think it was a profoundly irresponsible decision. I don't think that I would be doing my job if I did not say that. And what we saw tonight was a series of extremely irresponsible decisions that put a sexual abuse victim at risk, that put that person at risk in front of a national audience, and I could not have disagreed with it more. It was shameful.
Did she just say the quiet part out loud, Brianna, that her job as a member of Congress is to silence a political opponent? I mean, that's kind of what she was referencing there.
Yeah, stifling free speech is the top priority that she has. And she says it's, you know, profoundly inappropriate, but let's be clear, there is nothing inappropriate about a major platform like CNN giving the leading Republican candidate a chance to speak directly to the voters, which he hasn't been able to do because you had big tech silencing him for the past few years, right? So this was his opportunity. And she has some audacity to talk about threatening and putting E. Jean Carroll in a position of threat when she is calling for the arrest of Marine, who hasn't even been charged because authorities are still investigating. So she should keep her mouth shut on that one. And I just want to bring it back. You know, you mentioned Donald Trump pulling out that no card. And I think you made a great point. This was an opportunity for Donald Trump to defend himself and to have pushback from a liberal like Caitlin Collins. And he did exceptionally well. He also answered questions on Ukraine. He said, I am for people. I support people not dying anymore, right? He didn't say which side he supports. And that is the kind of policy that Americans want. We want to be out of this now. And you have Republicans and Democrats who are just funneling money to Ukraine. So it's refreshing to hear that.
Yeah, no, that was an interesting point, too, because I think it's very consistent with what Donald Trump has done in the past, his refusal to criticize Vladimir Putin publicly because, you know, he has to negotiate with behind closed doors. And just look at the track record Vladimir Putin did not invade Ukraine when Donald Trump was president, so they could just go there. But to that point, Mark, it did seem like there was a predetermined narrative based on the questions that were asked by Caitlin Collins, things like that, going back to the Russian collusion narrative, going back to 2020. And that was all at the bidding of CNN. That was their narrative that they chose to pursue.
Well, Ben Shapiro made a really good point on Twitter and said, CNN billed this as, part of the first in their series of Republican town halls, Republican presidential candidates town halls. These aren't the topics Republican presidential candidates want to talk about. They want to talk about the economy, crime, inflation, economic growth, lots of issues, immigration. And so CNN chose to spend a lot of this town hall, because it wasn't calling on citizens, it was the anchor's questions on topics that, I don't know if they plan to ask Republicans about these, but these are not top of mind for Republican voters. They're top of mind for Democrats.
No, they're not. Right. And that's my next question. Is there going to be the reciprocation for Joe Biden? Is he going to do one of these town halls and face some of the same types of questions? And we know the answer, Brianna. It's not going to happen.
It's not. Could you imagine Joe Biden sitting for an hour with Fox News? He would never do it. I mean, this is a man who in 2021 had 6 press conferences, in 2022, 5, and in 2023, 0. This is a man who walks away when reporters ask questions. So I think it does go to show you, Joe Biden ran a campaign from his basement. From when he went outside, there was 5 squares and people could sit in a square. He could not draw crowds, and likely because people knew he had nothing to say. Whereas Donald Trump, we remember what he did to Hillary Clinton in 2016. If you see Joe Biden and Donald Trump on the stage, and Donald Trump has far more ammunition this time around because of all the bad things that Joe Biden has done, he's going to absolutely slaughter him.
Yeah, talk about the record. That's what Donald Trump wants to do. CNN obviously had a different objective there. Great to see you both, Mark Halpern, Brianna Lyman. Thank you guys for being here.
Good to see you both.
Still ahead on John Bachman now, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis signing an immigration overhaul bill, one of the strongest for the state. What he has to say about immigration as the countdown to the end of Title 42 approaches this evening. And also Disney CEO addressing DeSantis' redistricting of Walt.
Probably the news story that had the most impact on my life. It was kind of the first time we saw a major international killing like this. But the prime suspect in Natalie Holloway's 2005 disappearance and assumed death during a school trip to Aruba, they are being extradited to the U.S. He's currently serving a 28-year sentence in Peru for a separate killing years later, actually 5 years to the date of Natalie's disappearance, of a 21-year-old business student. The Dutch citizen Joran van der Sloot, he was extradited on extortion and wire fraud charges for having the Holloway family wire him $25,000 in exchange for disclosing where her body was buried, but he pointed them in a wrong direction. Now, this extradition, it'll allow him to face trial here in America, but will return to the Peruvian prison afterwards. And Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just signed a sweeping immigration bill for his program that relocates migrants out of Florida after they cross the border. DeSantis says that he supports finishing Trump's physical wall along our southern border. It's just too big for agents to handle it alone. And he made his stance well known on immigration and illegal border crossings.
Immigration, legal immigration, nobody has a right to immigrate to this country, no foreigner. We determine as Americans what type of immigration system benefits our country.
Plus, Disney Co. in Florida, they are still wrapped up in a fight, tied up in legal battles against each other as DeSantis tries to gain control of the theme park and Disney tries to strike down what Democrats call the Don't Say Gay bill. CEO Bob Iger addressed this on Wednesday earnings.